All right, good evening. My name is MD-02, District Director for Congressman Johnny Olszewski, and I'm thrilled to welcome all of you here this evening for tonight's town hall with Congressman Olszewski and special guests, Maryland Comptroller Brooke Lierman and Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown. I wanted to start by thanking Towson University for their hospitality and hosting tonight's town hall. I also want to take a moment to recognize our elected officials that are here with us this evening. Senator Ben Brooks, Senator Carl Jackson, and Delegate Nick Allen. To all of our attendees, Towson University would like you to please take a moment to identify the nearest exits, just as a housekeeping reminder. Your presence shows how much you care about saving our democracy, and it is clear that Marylanders want answers. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules this evening to participate in tonight's important discussion. Before we begin, I do want to go over a few other housekeeping items. After the Congressman, Maryland Comptroller, and Maryland Attorney General all give their presentations this evening, attendees will be invited to share their ideas, questions, and concerns. As tonight's event is well attended and time is limited, all speakers and questions will be limited to 90 seconds, and participants who have come with a group this evening with similar requests are encouraged to present together with one spokesperson. And as a reminder, tonight's town hall will conclude by 8:30 p.m. If we are unable to get to your question this evening, you can email your questions to casework MD-02 at mail.house.gov, and our district office will ensure that your questions are answered. And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome your Maryland District 2 Representative, Congressman Johnny Olszewski.
Good evening, friends. Good evening. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I want to just, in addition to thanking Mandy Remmel and our amazing staff, both here in the district and Washington, many of whom are in the audience with you, I want to thank Towson University for being our gracious hosts tonight, lending their space, their staff, and their technology. I want to give a special thanks to two of my dear friends, our Attorney General Anthony Brown and our Comptroller Brooke Lierman. You both have been incredible partners. And as we are responding to what is truly unprecedented, I'm so fortunate to have them in this work. I was remarking to myself as I was coming in, during my time as a member of the General Assembly and as county executive, I never really paid that much attention. I was interested in what was happening at the federal government. But this is really an all-hands-on-deck moment where what's happening in the Congress and with this administration is affecting us in our homes and in our communities more than ever before. And so it's so important to have Anthony and Brooke leading the fight in Maryland along with me at the national level, our state legislators, and our local leaders. I think your presence here speaks volume to what we are facing. We know that so many of you are also watching on our live stream, but what your presence tells me is that, and what I've heard overwhelmingly from constituents is that people are concerned, people are angry, people are frustrated, people are seeking answers. And while I may not have all of them tonight, I want you to leave this place feeling heard and feeling that the fight that we are all leading together, that we are in this with you. And so I come to this conversation with you just grateful for your interest and for your willingness to participate in what's in front of us. President Trump and some ultra-conservatives in Congress spent the last year promising to lower costs for Americans. And they said they would do so on day one. On day one, prices will come down. Well, as you can see, if you look across the stage, I've been tracking the inaction on lowering costs in the United States Congress. And this is on my social media feed each and every day. And we started in our office as a joke, like how long before we actually do something to put money back in the pockets of hardworking Americans? And so we started, okay, 15 days, 32 days, 67 days, 81 days. Today is 97 days without a single vote to lower the cost of groceries, without a vote to lower the cost of gas, without a vote to lower your electricity bills, without a vote to help with child care or housing. Instead of lowering costs, costs are going up. We've seen that with the reckless on-again, off-again tariffs that are now currently paused, but just as easily could be put back on. Taxes that could cost Americans, on average, $3,800 more a year. That would be the largest single peacetime tax increase in this nation's history. A large coffee at Dunkin' would cost you $330. A new pair of kids' sneakers, $150. The average grocery bill, over $500 a month. A new iPhone could cost as much as $2,300. And God forbid your family need a new car or any home renovations if these tariffs/taxes are enacted. And so not only are we not lowering costs, not only are we driving up costs, but we see members of Congress and an administration that is hell-bent on taking away a critical safety net for people who have given their lives to this country, like our veterans, some of our most vulnerable, like our children who are just hungry and want to be fed, and to seniors who rely on health care programs. For the 29,000 people in Maryland's 2nd District who get their health insurance on the Affordable Care Act, the Republican budget proposal that just passed earlier today will increase premiums by as much as $2,340 per year. Now that's on top of the tariffs, taxes that we just talked about. Some premiums could go up even more. And if you're lucky enough to still have health care and pay that, know that there are 152,000 people in Maryland's 2nd District on Medicaid that are at risk of completely losing their health coverage. There are 49,000 people in our district who rely on food to feed their families. My colleagues are set to even increase bank overdraft fees this week. I mean, it's everything from the mundane to the really meaningful. And so, as we're doing all of that, and as we pass now a budget resolution that's set to balloon our deficit by trillions of dollars, you have to ask, why are we doing this? Well, if this budget resolution is enacted fully, it's because we're passing tax benefits to the ultra wealthy. This budget would borrow trillions of dollars for a tax cut worth $314,000 annually for the top 0.1%, and for anywhere between $32,000 and $60,000 per year for those in the top 1% of earners in this country. For the average family here in Maryland, in this country, we're talking hundreds of dollars. Now, I don't know about you, but I would just as much not have the $3,000 tariff increase, not have my health care and my food support slashed in exchange for giving billionaires more money. It's not what America voted for. It's not what I believe a stronger future for us is, but I believe that our future is worth fighting for. And so I'm here to say with you, I'm here to fight alongside Brooke and Anthony and each of you so that people come first, so that Marylanders aren't asked to foot the bill of this extreme administration. And this strategy has to be an all-of-the-above approach for us to win. That's why we're fighting in the Congress, that's why we're fighting in the courts, and it's why we're fighting in the community. And we are starting to win. We've already seen success in the courts, especially when it comes to the illegal firing of hardworking federal employees, including many of our neighbors. I know our Attorney General can talk to us about Maryland's efforts in this space. In 10 weeks, there have been 160 different lawsuits filed by Americans across the country directly challenging some of these orders. As of last week, federal judges had issued at least 57 court orders that block or pause the administration's efforts. And Brooke, I'll let you share the good news that you found on our way out here tonight. In Congress, We're calling out the House and the Senate's reckless agenda wherever we can. I signed into legislation to force a vote that would terminate this national emergency that allows the president to unilaterally enact these tariffs. Just today, I dropped my first piece of legislation. This is breaking news for those of you who are here covering tonight, to protect federal employees in this administration from DOGE and from all future administrations from wrongful termination. Specifically, this will protect employees who were on probationary status because they were promoted, because they were really good at their jobs. I had a woman who joined me as my special guest to the President's Joint Address to Congress, and she was hired under the first Trump administration. She did such a great job helping Maryland farmers that she was promoted. And because she was promoted, she was probationary. And Elon Musk and DOGE and President Trump thought that because you're probationary, you're expendable. Well, I think in America, no one is expendable. But I want to be clear about our limitations. We are down 3 votes to stop any of these actions in the House of Representatives. We need 3 more people to step up and say what's happening is wrong. And we need 4 votes in the Senate, which is why we're fighting in the courts, which is why I'm calling on the amicus briefs supporting these efforts in the courts. And it's also why I am so present with you and with my partners in the community, because we need to feel the heat in Congress to turn this ship around. Yeah. So, unlike my colleagues who are hiding from their constituents, I relish the opportunity to be with you and to hear from you. This is now my 7th town hall or community meeting since I was sworn in January. I was proud to stand with you at rallies, including 2 this past weekend, one in Baltimore, one in Kingsville. Because that is what real democracy is about. This is what real democracy looks like. And so, I know a thing or two about how government's supposed to work. I used to teach kids about U.S. government in our public schools. I talked about checks and balances and rule of law and transparency. And I can tell you, this ain't it, guys. This ain't it. And don't get me wrong, I welcome efficiency. When I was executive, we have over 1,000 pages of both for Baltimore County government and our school system, how we can be more efficient. We're saving millions of dollars by talking to and partnering with our employees. Efficiency isn't a scary word, but DOGE should scare the hell out of you. Because, look, we can balance budgets without cutting services. We can make historic investments in public education, workforce, and infrastructure without firing our employees, without asking working families to pay more. We did it. It's doable. So if Donald Trump and Elon Musk want to learn about efficiency without harming everyday Americans, my door is open, guys. Come on in, Longworth 1339. You are welcome anytime. I want to make sure I give some opportunity for my colleagues to speak about updates on what they're doing at the state level to push back. We want to hear from you. So I'll just stop there, and I'll turn the floor first over to our outstanding Attorney General, Anthony Brown, under whose leadership Maryland has been at the forefront of challenging these actions by President Trump and DOGE's unlawful attacks on our democracy. Attorney General Brown is defending Marylanders who have been or will be harmed by federal cuts, mass layoffs, or even efforts to dismantle agencies like the Department of Education. Attorney General Brown, it is an honor to have you here. Thank you for being my friend in your work. Please welcome. How's everybody doing this evening? What a turnout. What a turnout. Yes, indeed. People ask me, because you may recall I was in Congress for 6 years. People ask me if I miss it. I say the one thing I do miss were the colleagues, the like-minded colleagues that I got to work with. And I only regret that I'm not on Capitol Hill to be able to serve with a real champion like Congressman Olszeski. So thank you, Johnny, for your leadership, your extraordinary work. Brooke, it's great to work with you in state government again. To my extended members of the Board of Directors, the General Assembly, that give me my resources to do the job I can do with my team, thank you very much. And to CD2, Congressional District 2, thank you. Thank you for sending, I'm going to call him Johnny O, okay, I'm going to do that. Sending Johnny O to Washington, being here this evening,
You are a real reflection, not an inspiration being here, but a real reflection of what democracy requires, which is each and every one of us showing up, being present, and doing our part. So I'm not going to talk for long, but as the Congressman mentioned, I want to give you a quick overview of some of the actions that your Office of the Attorney General is taking on your behalf. And I want to start by saying that I made a commitment when I assembled this Federal Accountability Unit that would take on and challenge the Trump administration whenever, wherever, to protect the interests of Maryland's. They said, well, what kind of cases are you going to bring? I said, I don't know right now what they look like. This was a few months ago. But the cases that I bring will be those where I can meet with a group of Marylanders just like you. And I can connect the dot between the action that I'm bringing and what's important to you on your kitchen table. So I'm going to describe to you some of the actions we're taking. And if there's anything that I present and you think like, wow, you missed the mark, certainly during Q&A, I'd like to hear from you about that. But we really try to stay focused on the things that really impact Marylanders. We've been busy. We have, Congressman Olszewski mentioned, over 100 lawsuits. Those aren't all Office of Attorney General lawsuits. We are involved in about 10 or 11 of those lawsuits. We do it in partnership with about 22 other attorneys general in this multi-state coalition, leveraging resources and expertise and knowledge, experience to defend the interest, protect the interests of Maryland and those respective states. So the day after inauguration, we filed our first lawsuit. And that I joined forces with other attorneys general, and we challenged the president's executive order ending birthright citizenship. This isn't just, it's not just unconstitutional, it's a direct assault on many Maryland families. And these are our neighbors, our co-workers. It's the very identity of the diverse state that we are in Maryland. It's a state of welcoming and belonging, and that executive order undermines that very value and principle that we all live by. Imagine Maryland children, born and raised here, being told they have no country, no home. Imagine Maryland parents living in fear each day when their family could be torn apart without warning. This is not some distant debate. It's an immediate threat to many of our neighbors, our co-workers, and our own children's classmates. President Trump's policies don't just threaten families' lives, they threaten Maryland's economy. So we filed a lawsuit for the unlawful mass firing of thousands of federal probationary employees. These are employees working in 15, 20 agencies that we brought into this lawsuit. This mass layoff jeopardized the state's ability to assist these federal workers and their families who lost jobs, to offer employment services, to extend unemployment benefits, and to even just identify who is out of work. The administration isn't just eliminating positions, they're eliminating livelihoods. The sudden loss of incomes, health care, and even the roofs over families' heads. So our office quickly led a coalition of attorneys general. We filed an action in Baltimore over these unlawful violence. And because these workers aren't just statistics, they're the backbone of our community and our economy, where 1 in every 10 Maryland workers is a federal government employee. Another threat to the health and well-being of millions of Marylanders is the president's federal funding freeze. That freeze would devastate our hospitals, schools, roads, public safety programs, the very programs that we rely on every day. Funding for cancer research, frozen. Money for opioid treatment programs, frozen. Support for special education, gone. So we refuse to let Marylanders suffer while the Trump administration played politics with our lives, so we sued. We cannot allow the Trump administration to illegally withhold a single dollar that belongs to the people of Maryland. But it's not just cuts to essential services that put Marylanders at risk. It's unprecedented federal overreach into our personal financial information. Another way we're protecting Maryland's financial lifeline is our lawsuit over the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, which is everything but efficient, or DOGE, and their access to our nation's central payment system. $7.6 trillion flow through that central payment system. Maryland receives, and Comptroller can correct me if I'm wrong, $11 billion every year, and each and every one of us and Marylanders around the state receive $51 billion a year through that system. But it's not just the money. DOGE has access to personal information for every Marylander who receives federal benefits. Social Security recipients, veterans, student loan borrowers, taxpayers. The potential for abuse, privacy violations, and political targeting is staggering, which is why we filed 2 lawsuits to stop this dangerous overreach. One to block DOGE's access to the data, and one to go after the very unconstitutional nature of its existence. So make no mistake that handing unconfirmed political appointees the keys to this system is dangerous, and that's why we took action. Also dangerous, President Trump's cut to funding for NIH, or the National Institute of Health. These cuts would devastate Johns Hopkins, University of Baltimore, University of Maryland, and dozens of research facilities across the state. We're talking about cancer research, Alzheimer's treatment, and breakthrough therapies for our children, all put at risk. These cuts wouldn't just eliminate jobs, they would cost lives. So we sued to stop these cuts, at least for now. But that hasn't stopped the administration from unlawful attempts to disrupt grant funding issued by the NIH. The president is jeopardizing public health and undermining the decades of scientific progress that we in Maryland and across the nation have achieved. So we're not going to let them solve this scientific progress. These aren't the only federal policies that threaten Marylanders' lives. HHS Secretary Kennedy abruptly terminated public health resources totaling nearly $11 billion issued by the Department of Health and Human Services. Slashing these critical public health resources cripples our ability to protect Marylanders from deadly outbreaks like measles and bird flu, and the bird flu. That's why I filed a lawsuit to temporarily block these cuts last week. So there are more cases that I could go through. Perhaps we'll pick them up in question and answer. And of course, I'm here not only to answer questions as best I can, but to hear from you what's on your mind, what's of concern. Thank you once again for coming out, and Congressman Olszewski, thank you for including me, inviting me to this evening's program.
Thank you, A.G. Brown, and it's now my privilege and honor to welcome up an outstanding fiscal leader for our state, but someone who also cares deeply and passionately, not just about the fiscal implications, but the people behind the numbers. And so it's my privilege and honor to welcome to the stage now our Comptroller, Brooke Lierman.
Click the button I take it? On the back. Okay. Fancy clicker. Good evening. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you. I wish it was under different circumstances, but I am so grateful that you have taken the time to show up. A very wise man who happens to be the congressman for the 2nd District once said, every day try to do one thing. And today, I'm sure that you have done other things, but you are also doing something very important by being here. So thank you. And thank you to that Congressman for convening us here tonight. Thank you to Towson University for hosting us. And of course, thank you to my partner in state government, Attorney General Brown. I'm a former federal litigator, so I love listening to hear about all the cases that he is bringing and that he is winning on behalf of Marylanders. So, and one of those cases that Congressman Olszeski hinted at that I did want to share in case you hadn't seen it yet was some good news that just about, I think, an hour ago, the Supreme Court reinstated the district court's order to bring Kilmar Garcia home. Great news. and we've got to hold on to those wins. They're important. For those of you who haven't met again, I'm Comptroller Brooke Lierman, honored to be serving in this role, and really excited to be with all of you tonight to talk about a somewhat of a downer topic, how all of this is going to affect Maryland. But I think it's really important for everybody to understand the ramifications of what is happening in the state and what it means to the state. So we all are reading the stories about the lives who are being destroyed, that are being destroyed across the country, the challenges that we're seeing. And I also want to say a thank you to all of our federal workers who are here. If you are a federal worker, thank you for your service. Thank you so much. But tonight what I'm going to talk about is actually about the effect of all of this to our state and to our state government. So as the Comptroller of Maryland, I'm really proud to have 1,200 team members in 12 offices across the state. Our core priorities, we are focused on making government work better, ensuring that the resources of our agency reach the people of Maryland, and ensuring that we're setting up Maryland for long-term sustainable economic success. And so as a piece of that, we take the time to study and understand the numbers of what's driving our economy. And you and I read the headlines and the stories, and certainly there is nothing if not uncertainty out there today. So my goal is to provide some certainty about what is happening to our finances, what is happening to our economy, and how we will respond to them. And to be clear, there is an economic storm on our doorstep. Unfortunately, it will be Marylanders, our families, our communities, our businesses that are going to shoulder the burden of the consequences coming from federal government layoffs, changes in federal spending, the clawback of billions of dollars, and the shifts in how we deal with other countries, from tariffs to immigration. That's going to directly impact Maryland. So let's start talking about that. Okay. Where do I push this? Tech support?
Push the right arrow?
Anyway, I'll keep talking. The Comptroller of Maryland, one of the when I go around the state and I chat with people, they often say to me, "Oh, you seem like a nice person, but can you remind me, what is it again that the Comptroller of Maryland does?" Well, I am like the elected CFO of the state of Maryland. And to be a good elected CFO, I have to understand the trends that drive our state's economy and impact the revenue that we use to fund a range of services that we rely on every day. So several years ago, for the very first time, I said, hey, we need to make sure that we understand the trends underlying our economy, and we're sharing that information with Marylanders and policymakers like the Congressman and Attorney General. So we produced the first ever report on the state of Maryland's economy. And in that report, we documented how the federal government is really a key driver of Maryland's employment growth and of our household incomes. In fact, the most recent data used in March 2025, before layoffs began, there were 161,000 federal civilian jobs located in the state of Maryland, right? So that's Social Security, CMS, NIH, and more. But even more than that, as of tax year 2023, nearly 252,000 households in Maryland drew a paycheck from the federal government. And when you throw in retirees, that's another 152,000 households. So hundreds and thousands of households are relying on federal income. And that's jobs in Maryland and elsewhere. And that's just federal employees. We haven't gotten to contractors yet. So next slide. So as you can see, income from federal wages really supports Marylanders as well in every county, and federal employment is an asset for our economy. If you look here, you'll see there's a 10% share in Baltimore County and Baltimore City, and the share closer to the DC region is even bigger. And if you look down to Southern Maryland, a huge percentage of federal employees supporting living there. Now, I also want to talk about this because sometimes people see federal employment as a liability. But look, every state has different types of jobs, different pieces of its economy, different industries. Texas had oil and gas. Maryland has a federal government. And I don't see, that's a wonderful thing, because for years and years, we have been supplying services that support the rest of the nation, right? We have been finding cures for cancer and supporting elderly, our elder neighbors with their Social Security checks. This is an amazing thing that we do, and I think that's important to remember, that this is an important industry. So next slide. The reality is that thousands of Marylanders are now or could soon be out of work, and that means less revenue coming into the state. Not only is that challenging for those Marylanders and those communities, it is a challenge at the state level, the macro level too. I chair something called the Board of Revenue Estimates. We meet in December, March, and September. This is the body. We are the single source of truth for the governor and the General Assembly on what revenue we will be bringing into the state. In a different parlance, we measure the purse strings, right? We tell the governor and the General Assembly what they can use to balance the budget, what they need to balance it against. And we just lowered to 2.4% the expectation that we have of what's coming in over FY25 and 26. Next slide. So, of course, there are jobs in the private sector. And one of the things that we saw in our State of the Economy report is that our private sector has actually been fairly stagnant in growth since 2017. And while the federal sector has been growing. However, so I do hope and I do believe that many federal employees, if they want, hopefully will be able to find jobs in the private sector. But even if that happens, we will still have less revenue coming into the state of Maryland because federal wages tend to be higher than those found in the private sector. So here in Maryland, the average federal civilian wage is $126,000 versus the average private wage, which is $73,000. And as you can see, that's the largest gap in our region. We're the largest gap in the region. So next slide. And in Baltimore City and Baltimore County, the average federal civilian wage is $103,000 to $120,000. And so there is a gap, as you can see. So large-scale job losses at the federal sector could really challenge the middle class in Maryland. And that comes at a challenging time as well when we're seeing higher costs due to tariffs and higher costs and challenges in the housing sector. We have a housing crisis in the state of Maryland. And so all of these things mean challenges for Marylanders. The next thing I want to talk about is how much money is coming in through grants. We see in FY24, Maryland received about $22 billion in federal funds through hundreds of awards to Medicaid, Medicare, foster care, FEMA, all sorts of services that support Marylanders. And of course, Attorney General Brown and other AGs have been diligent in making sure that we're fighting to preserve that funding. And for that, I am very grateful. They are having great success, and they're just going to keep fighting on behalf of our states. Next slide. So how the Trump administration engages with other countries and with foreign-born Marylanders is also extremely challenging, and it's going to have a chilling effect on our economy. That's the truth. Here in Maryland, we understand the value that immigrants bring to our culture, to our communities, and to our economy. We understand that diversity is not just our strength, it's our future. Immigration boosts innovation and entrepreneurship, expands our workforce, and it's advancing our state's economy. In fact, we did a report last year out of my agency on the importance of international immigration to our economy, finding that if not for increases in international migration in 2023, Maryland would have lost population for a third straight year. Immigrants are 16%, more than 16% of our population, but they're more than 20% of our workforce. So we are very lucky to have a very diverse workforce and population in Maryland, but every day there's new challenges, not just to undocumented immigrants, but to legal immigrants in this country. I know that the University of Maryland and Hopkins and others, UMBC, have already identified that several of their students have had their visas revoked and will have to return to their home countries. This is going to be extremely challenging, of course, and it's scary, and it's going to have an impact on our economy in the long run, too. And then, of course, there's tariffs, which is simply another word for taxes. They both begin with T, and they have a lot in common. President Trump's trumped-up tariffs are making everything more expensive, from cars to coffee, electronics, and even wedding dresses. I just got a notice from a store where I buy lots of my suits in Canada that I better order today because starting May 2nd, they will be a lot more expensive. Should they continue, the Tax Foundation has estimated that President Trump's reciprocal, quote, reciprocal tariffs could increase expenses by $2,100 for every American. But I don't want to end there. I want to end by reminding us that Maryland's resilience in this global storm will come from certainty and resolve in these uncertain times. Because I think that's where Maryland will shine, our resilience. While we cannot control President Trump's decisions, we can control our response. So while Trump brings chaos and uncertainty, we at the state level, we bring partnership. We bring certainty. With certainty at the state level, families and businesses can plan better, can prepare, can know that their representatives are fighting for them and have their back. Our agency will continue to be that single source of truth on economics, on revenues, on where we stand as a state, and what we need financially to endure through the next 2 years. In the months ahead, my office will release an in-depth analysis in partnership with the University of Maryland Robert H. Smith School of Business on the exact cost of these federal actions to our state. Because the first step to resilience and building resilience is to understand the scale of the challenge. My core life philosophy that I believe is that we all do better when we all do better. And I know that if you are in this audience, you believe that too. One of my, a quote that sort of carries me through these challenging times comes from an ancient Jewish text. And it is that you are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. Each and every day, we will do one thing. We will not desist from this work of building and rebuilding over and over again our freedoms and democracies. And I'm so grateful to be here to be your partner in that important work. Thank you so much.
Again, we will open up the floor to all of you. We want to hear directly from you. And before we do that, also want to recognize we've also been joined by Councilman Pat Young as well. Thank you, Councilman.
Can we give all of them another round of applause for fighting for us and our democracy? So at this time, we have come to the Q&A or your comment portion of the evening. We will be placing a microphone at the end of each aisle. If you are here this evening and you would like to share your ideas or comments or questions with our panel, you can make your way down towards the microphone. Again, we'll have a line here and we will have a line here. The mics are coming over. And so we just ask you to line up. As a reminder, we will ask you to keep your comments to 90 seconds. We do have a clock timer here to just keep you in that 90-second time limit so that way we can hear everybody this evening. But we really thank you for coming, and we will start. We'll go back and forth. So we'll start with Grace. Grace is at the mic here, and PJ from our district office is at the mic over there. So we'll switch it out. So we'll start with you, Grace. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Hi, I'm Tom Shaw. Johnny O, you do know me. I have two questions. First off, I have one hat, which is I work for Catholic Relief Services. I'm the head of the Inclusive Finance Department. I speak for the hundreds of millions, or I want to speak for the hundreds of millions of our brothers and sisters overseas that are no longer receiving life-saving services. My question on that is, which Republican colleagues have you approached to discuss the importance of soft power through effective aid that has been canceled through the dismantlement of USAID? And have you been able to convince any to change their public viewpoints that it is a waste of resources when it is not? That's my first point. The second is, in my other hat, I am the current treasurer of the Islamic Society of Baltimore. I want to ask you, for my brothers and sisters in Gaza, which Republican colleagues have you approached about a solution to getting aid back into Gaza for our starving brothers and sisters? Because since the Trump administration has come in, all aid has been cut off. People do not eat, they do not drink, they do not sleep. And that is inexcusable for us to continue to do. We're killing so many people. So those are my two questions to you, Johnny O, and welcome, because we were together on the 19th of March. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to see you again. The answer to both of your questions is I'm talking to all of my colleagues, but especially those who happen to be opposed to things like USAID and aid, whether it's in Gaza or in Africa or in Ukraine. It has been very difficult. It's been very difficult to see our turn away from the rest of the world. One of my two committee assignments is on foreign affairs. And one of the first things I did as a member of Congress almost immediately after my swearing in was I was in front of USAID with Chris Van Hollen and other lawmakers decrying what I believe is an illegal action in terms of not following federal law by the president. Every opportunity I have on the committee, I talk about how that soft power is so important, because not only in the world, because as we're withdrawing, people like the Communist Party of China is moving in. Okay, so let's not be confused about what's happening as America withdraws and we're losing that soft power and that ability to help. But we're not providing education. I'm a former committee, you know, I was a teacher, right? We're not teaching our young people in some of these conflict-ridden countries. If we're not providing education, it makes young people more likely to be radicalized, to be brought into militia and violent organizations. And so the fact that the United States is withdrawing from our aid across the world is incredibly troubling. I'm a believer in my faith that we are a brother's keeper. And so again, in Gaza and all over the world, we need to be caring for people. We need to be providing this humanitarian assistance. So thank you for raising the issue, because it is one of many, and this is all intentional. This is all about, well, if you're worried about tariffs, you're not talking about aid. If you're worried about inflation, you're not talking about the fact that I'm firing employees. If you're worried about employees, you're not worried about the fact that you get the picture. But it's so important that we are having these conversations and that we're out in the community and that we're calling members of Congress's offices and we're posting on social media, we're sending letters. Because as I said in my remarks, we need 3 people to change their hearts. And if you know that by not doing the right thing, you're going to both be remembered by history for not doing the right thing and you're going to lose your election anyway, I think you're a lot more likely to do the right thing. And I think people are starting to see what's happening. And because, look, veterans aren't Republicans or Democrats. People who get health care or get fed aren't Republicans or Democrats. People are understanding, I think, are starting to see this is not popular. This is not going to go over well. And that you can't just bury your head in the sand and not have a town hall and expect to get away with it. So thank you for the question. We're going to keep pushing until we find those votes to change that.
One question for the Congressman. I also have a question for the Attorney General. How do you deal with a president who doesn't believe in the courts? How do you deal with a president who says the courts have no jurisdiction? How do you deal with a president who's willing to take away the funding of seniors who have worked all of our lives, who may not get our Social Security in May? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with a president who blackmails every nation in the world to do what he says you have to do, or I cut off funds and aid to your country? How do you deal with a man like this? I'm not so sure you can deal with it in the Congress. Yeah. So how do you deal with it? Yeah. And to the Attorneys General more so in the state of Maryland, what are you doing specifically to address the increased crime with our juveniles?
Thank you for the question. My personal care regimen is in no particular order, but usually prayer, exercise, and bourbon. It's hard. It's hard to deal with a president who thinks he's above the law. And by the decision of the Supreme Court, in many ways, is exempt from the law. But that doesn't mean the people who are around him who have to enforce the law are also exempt. And so I'm taking heart that because of people like our Attorney General, because of organizations like Democracy Forward, which we had on one of our virtual town halls, I know many of you joined that, are leading the fights, and the courts are stepping up. In the case that the Comptroller mentioned, it was written by the Chief Justice. And so I will say this, I mean, we have to be prepared for all things to be on the table if the president doesn't follow the court orders, especially when they're fully adjudicated by the Supreme Court. So it's one thing to say I don't agree with a district court decision. There's an appeal process, but I think my red line, candidly, is if you are ignoring a court order by the Supreme Court. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen now that this has come out. But
and what do you do if he decides he's not going to go along with the United States Supreme Court? You have an Attorney General of the United States who has said that the courts have no jurisdiction in any of these cases.
This is why we're also fighting in the Congress and in the community, because we're going to have the community demand that the president follow the action. And I need to find, whether it's to pass a bill or, look, all options. And when I say all options for me, all options on the table. But for me, it is pretty awful to be a president who believes that you are literally not obligated to follow a law of Congress and a Supreme Court decision. And so if that means that we need to remove the president, Congress has the authority. So that's why it has to be all we love. We can't rely on, I don't just rely on, it's not just us pushing it on you all, although you guys have an important role. There's a lot of power in this room. There's a lot of power in this room. But you need to know that I'm going to do my part, and that the Attorney General is doing his part, and that the organizations, but it's got to be all, because if it doesn't all work together, it's not going to work. And so it's hard, and I hope that you understand what I'm trying to say, is that we have to pursue all of those things collectively, because they only work in concert with each other. I only get those 3 votes because they feel the pressure at home, because they see the court decisions that are coming in the favor and says, this is actually wrong. It all is the bigger narrative of who we really are as a people, and it's being written as we speak. I mean, it is being written as we speak, where, again, people are going to have to ask themselves, where do I want to land in the history books? And this is like not cute, or, you know, there are important issues that have been throughout my career that I've been proud to be part of, but I think that these issues are so fundamental to who we are as a people that it's going to be one thing every day, but in all those places. So I hope that gives you some answer. I'm happy to talk more, and then I did get a question for the Attorney General as well.
Great, and I'll be brief, thanks for the question. I have an organized crime unit in my criminal division, and my organized crime unit made up of investigators and attorneys. We go after big organizations, right? You have a state's attorney, Scott Schellenberger, every county has a state's attorney, working with Baltimore County Police. I work with all of them. I work with Baltimore County, Baltimore City, DEA, ATF, FBI. We go after big gang activity. We focus on drugs, we focus on guns, and we focus on violence, and usually there's an intersection of all 3. And more you see young kids, juveniles in that. I know it's hard to believe, and I'll probably get a few hisses because you're not going to believe the facts. Juvenile crime actually is beginning to go down in Maryland, not fast enough, obviously. And what we do is we work not only with law enforcement, but we work with a lot of local government, bringing the resources into the community. Yesterday, I was with Baltimore City Police Department and the mayor of Baltimore. And what we did is we announced the takedown of 11 indicted individuals. Some of them were juveniles. But what we also talked about is, because when we're removing those elements, right, that are providing fentanyl and other drugs into the community, there are members of the community who are relying on them for services, right? Where they get their fix, their fentanyl, their opioids. So we're not only taking down those elements, but we're bringing in the services for those who rely on them, and we're also offering those that are involved in violence an option, right? An option. You can either sign up for this program, we'll get you services, we'll get you on the right path, or not. And if you choose not to and you engage in violence, they're going to come after you hard. And again, the numbers are going down, not fast enough, but these are some of the things that my organized crime unit is doing in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and around the state. You really got to talk to the state's attorney on that, because I can tell you right now, the juveniles that I'm taking down, they're not going home. Like I said, I focus on the big ones. Okay, they're not. So I mean, and I'm not punting to the state's attorney, because I'll tell you right now, your state's attorneys around the state, they are working hard. The volume is great, the resources are limited, and it's not just the state's attorneys, it's what's happening in the Department of Juvenile Services. The governor is working with the General Assembly to reform juvenile services, to get them up to speed so that they can do what they need to do. There's a big debate, do you prosecute kids as adults or juveniles? And here's the takeaway. A lot of people say, hey, let's prosecute juveniles as adults. Here's the deal. You prosecute juveniles as adults, 80% of them go home. They're not going to be convicted. And when you prosecute them as adults and not as juveniles, they don't get the services of the Department of Juvenile Services. So you prosecuted them as an adult, unsuccessfully, and they're going back home, back into the community with zero services. So there are arguments on both sides of whether you should treat children like children, prosecute them as juveniles, or prosecute them as adults. But the bottom line is we've got to improve the Department of Juvenile Services so it can really be there for these young people.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My concern is that all we're doing here is chipping around the edges, and you yourself, Johnny, have admitted that there's only so much you can do without 3 more votes. Good luck. That's wishful thinking. We have to have a national campaign that's going to take out Trump and the Republicans, and we've got 2 years to do it. In 2 years, we crush the Republicans, we can impeach Trump, we can impeach Vance, and then we'll have a Democratic president. And we have to have a national campaign to do that. All of these people want to fight. We want to donate. We don't have any place to donate for this national campaign. We've got to take the Republicans out. We can't just be chipping around the edges, hope for the Republican Supreme Court to be on our side here and there. We'll make little changes. We'll try to do one thing. But we have to end this in 2 years. We cannot survive 4 more years of this. So my question is the Maryland delegation, you, Mr. Van Hollen, Senator Brooks, are they going to lead this effort to take out the Republican and the billionaires and Donald Trump in 2 years? We need a plan. We need a vision for the Democratic Party that's different than the vision that the Democratic Party has had up until now. We have to see things in a different way. We have to bring the new leaders of the Democratic Party together to lead this campaign. Are you interested?
I'm going to do whatever it takes now, tomorrow, and in 2 years to make sure that there are 3 votes plus to turn around what's happening. So we're going to do everything. I'm going to do everything in my power today to stop what's happening. But in 2 years, you might see a little less of me because I got other work to do in the district. I'm going to make sure that you all know that I'm going to keep fighting for a year, but I will make sure that we have those 3 votes plus in 2 years. I will do everything I can. Everything I can. I am and will continue to do everything I can to make sure we have those votes.
Hello, I'm Sharonda Hudson, and I am actually an 88 manager for a nonprofit housing solution. And my work enforces neighbors to civil rights laws. I'm also a mother of a son that's also an adult, and it's also an acceptance month. Well, I'm here today because I'm extremely concerned about the dismantling dismantling of the Administration of Community Living, or ACL, under the Department of Health and Human Services. They support critical services for older adults and people with disabilities, including funding for the ADA centers across the country. Here in Maryland, we're fortunate to have the Mid-Atlantic ADA Center right in Rockville. This center helps our state and region comply with the American Disabilities Act. They train, educate, and support local governments, employers, nonprofits, and individuals so that inclusion isn't just a value, it's a practice. If ACL is dismantled, these centers lose their funding. That means less education, fewer protection, more barriers for people with disabilities, and that's simply unacceptable. Also, I wanted to lift up that I'm just concerned to the dismantling of EL. I don't know what we're doing, but now you can just come in and do reverse discrimination, and that's part of my job as well. I'm glad to see you over there. We're having a meeting, but I also want to lift up the National Infrastructure Bank. This may be a great opportunity for a bill that is revisited, that's passed, so we can start having funding to have infrastructure for programs for affordable housing and other major things that can be a partnership with the state, county, and local governments.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to engage with you. My name is Angela Clark, and I am a member of Progressive Maryland and of the Sunrise Movement, which is a youth-led climate activist movement. I'm here on behalf of the Sunrise Baltimore Hub as part of our People vs. Billionaires campaign to make polluters pay. So we keep hearing that Democrats are using every tool at their disposal to stop Trump and his billionaire friends from turning America into an oligarchy. But so far, the boldest moves we've seen are a filibuster, matching outfits, and folding on the budget with no pressure. Meanwhile, fossil fuel giants and other powerful industries keep pouring money into politics, blocking real progress in climate action, and buying off both parties. So my question is, will you commit to rejecting donations from fossil fuel companies, big pharma, and other industries with a history of regulatory capture? And beyond symbolic gestures, what concrete steps will you take to stop this corporate takeover and fight for a future that puts people and the planet first? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the work that you do. The fight is as important now as ever. We as a party have to be better. And I had the privilege and honor of thanking Senator Booker, both gave a little fist bump on the floor, and then I had a chance to thank him in the hearing for his courage, because it took a lot. And I will say that his actions, perhaps more than anything we've done to date, drew the attention of the American people. And we need that kind of selfless, centered leadership moving forward. As it relates to sort of all things campaign finance, let me tell you what I believe, because I tried to exhibit that as county executive. I was proud that we created the first ever public financing of elections in Baltimore County's history, which will take place in the upcoming election cycle for the first time in our history, because I do believe that it not only creates more opportunities for candidates of color and women and non-traditional candidates to have access, it levels the playing field. And so I'm excited to see the council enact that this cycle. I would love to see the federal government create that same opportunity so that we can take all of the special interests out of the equation. I also think the other major challenge to our democracy is Citizens United. We have to overturn that court rule where when you see hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars flood into elections, and we saw with Elon Musk and what he did with President Trump to help buy the presidency in exchange for the access that he has now, those are the changes that I think are most significant, and that you have my word, I will fiercely fight for in the years ahead in Congress. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Bruce McCubbin. I live in Towson. I have two grandsons, 7 and 4, who also live in the district. My wife and I and their parents are trying to teach them what it means to live in a representative democracy. Lately, I've been telling them the story, Hans Christian Andersen's The Emperor's New Clothes. I know you know the story. If somebody doesn't, two con men come to an emperor one day, and the emperor loves gaudy, elaborate outfits. And they say they will make him the most elaborate outfit ever, but only it can be seen by people who are not ignorant or stupid. I'll let that sink in. If you're not ignorant or stupid, you can see it. Everybody else can't. Lots of officials, including the emperor's aides, and the emperor himself visit the convent to watch them making this suit of nothing. And then eventually it's finished and the emperor is helped to dress in it and goes marching down the street until a little kid, maybe the age of one of my grandsons, says, "He's naked, Mommy!" I feel like that's where we are today, Congressman. I feel like that we are not in an area where we're effectively fighting. I don't think anybody in Washington is willing to shout out consistently, loudly, rudely, insistently that we as a nation are on the wrong trajectory. I see non-Republican leadership I don't see any non-Republican leadership being effective in challenging the Republicans and their countless legal and unconstitutional assaults on what it means to be an American. We're being polite. They aren't. Furthermore, nobody is saying or communicating a strategy to fight this battle. Now, I noticed that much of the Republican support comes from folks who have been economically left beside. They've been left behind when industries moved out. The industrial base declined. And they're scared. I understand that. They went to somebody who promised them a beautiful set of clothes that doesn't exist. So what I'm saying to you, sir, as a son of Dundalk, as somebody who comes from a blue-collar area, I think, and also more centrist and not as radical, you have, sir, the ability to appeal to these folks and bring it back towards normalcy. And I implore you, please consider to do that. Step up. It won't be comfortable. But don't be afraid to rabble-rouse every day, every hour. Get in people's faces. You've got an opportunity to make a difference. You took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States as a retired federal employee, so did I. I take that seriously, and I'm only asking that we do that for our grandchildren and their grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. Father of a trans daughter. We're seeing a lot of attacks against the trans community, but broadly the LGBTQ community. I'm going to spread this a little bit farther. There's recently been talk that Trump may be calling out the Insurrection Act in order to control the border. A.G. Brown, you've mentioned that DOJ has gotten the data of perhaps political opponents. What is going to happen when Americans start getting picked up on the street and expedited overseas? Trump has already said, and the White House has confirmed, he is thinking about using El Salvadorians for Americans.
What I think we're going to bring the legal actions, either the state or civil society organizations, ACLU and others. You heard earlier this evening about a success story at the Supreme Court. I know a lot of us have our concerns and doubts about this conservative court, but the one thing I will say is a lot of those conservative principles are really, some of them that you often hear conservative jurists espouse are the very principles that we're going to rely on, like, original interpretation of the Constitution, the role of Congress, the role of the courts, the power of appropriation and things like that, separation of powers, federalism, and we're going to rely on that, and we're going to get some wins even from this Supreme Court. We're not going to win every case, And we're not going to be able to save everyone from deportation, but we're going to fight every fight that we can. Where we have standing, we'll join with those. When we don't have standing, support them in their efforts. So we'll win many, we'll lose some. We'll have confidence in the courts, because whether you like an outcome of the court or not, okay, it is the judiciary, and you can't like the judiciary when you like the outcome, and then not like the judiciary when you don't like the outcome. So we're going to fight that. We're going to use the courts. People often ask me, are we facing a constitutional crisis? How many people think we're facing a constitutional crisis? Okay, I'm not joining you, which is not the popular thing to do, because the majority put your hands in the air, and I do want to get reelected. But I'm not going to join you on that, because we're not in a constitutional crisis yet. Our Constitution is being challenged. The norms are being challenged. The courts are working. The media, the press continues to work. We are able to gather here and have a town hall and a conversation and critique an administration. Our Constitution, our democracy is working. It's fragile, it's being tested, it's working. Where we will face that first crisis, I believe, is when the president, in the face of a clear judgment, not an order that was a little, he should have followed the order when the airplanes were in the air going to El Salvador, and they said, well, it was an oral order, and it should have been a written order. But when there's a clear judgment in a case against this president, and the president does not follow that order, that'll be our constitutional crisis. We're not there.
And then what?
And then it's a real constitutional crisis, and all hell's going to break loose. I can't sit here and tell you that there's an answer. But the sad story is this. When the courts issue an order, and it needs to be enforced, federal courts, it's the U.S. Marshal. Who does the U.S. Marshal work for? Works for General Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General. If he doesn't follow a court order, a judgment of a court, we've got a real crisis. And then what? We may have to take it to the streets. I don't know.
Hi everybody, my name is Diana. I've got a little name and stuff, but that's what's on my birth certificate. But I married a soldier, so my last name is Brooke. So here in Maryland, we also have our National Security Agency. My husband's retired after 21 years of service. I've been married to him for almost 20 years. When I turned on the news earlier today, I saw that we traded a Russian-German spy for a ballerina. And I see us having this battle with these tariffs and the way we trade with China. And I'm even more concerned, what are we going to do to prevent that from escalating and going to real war with China? Because that means thousands of our retired veterans are going to be called back to active duty service.
No, look, the fears are real. We have a president who's acting with reckless abandon in his escalation, not just in places like that, but also with these tariffs. In my role in the Foreign Affairs Committee, unfortunately, I'm seeing all kinds of aggression. We see the president cozying up to Vladimir Putin, who is no friend of the United States. He actively interfered with our elections. He is assaulting a democracy in Ukraine. And so there are real concerns out there. But I think we are the ones, whether it's the court order or issues of national import, we are the ones who hold the line. I will continue doing my part in the Congress. The Attorney General is going to keep doing his part. The Comptroller is going to keep speaking to our constituents about what this means for us. But we are the ones who defend this democracy. We are the ones who inherited that treasure. And so, it is a fragile gift. It is not that old either. And, I had the privilege and honor of marching on the 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday in Selma, Alabama. And what I can tell you is it was so striking to me that we had Americans who were willing to step up and in the face of billy clubs and fire hoses and attack dogs and their own police forces that were turned against American citizens, that people persisted nonetheless, that they marched forward to demand what was part of their American birthright. And I will just say, I think we're in that moment where if we want to keep our American birthright and the freedoms that we have been born with, we are going to be called to do that too. Unfortunately, I don't think it will be physical violence on ourselves, but we need to be prepared for whatever might come our way. But just know this, that I and the people on this stage, I will link arms with all of you and go wherever we have to go. Okay?
Hello everyone, my name is Jonathan, and I don't have any questions, I just have a comment. I wear two hats, working class, and I'm also a policy student, so I do understand navigating through ambiguity and confusion and uncertainty. It's really hard to articulate to an audience, and I just want to commend you because like you said, it's hard to come up to your constituents when you don't have all the answers, and really like show face, because a lot of our leaders can barely do that, can barely show their face, you know what I'm saying? So I really do tip my hat off to you, Congressman Johnny O, and all the other executives here. I just want to say that me, like my lived experience, me being a openly gay black man and proud to be it, and also educated and all of these things, I want to see leaders who actually lead with integrity. You don't see that. As a leader, you are supposed to not lean on your own prisms and your own perceptions. You're supposed to expand your mind. You're supposed to do all of these beautiful things that are not being done at the national level. So with that being said, I'm very passionate, as you all can see, but I tip my hat off to you all. I wish you all the best in this fight, and I know that we can win. My favorite saying is, all things done in the dark will come to light eventually. And those who really rule in the best interest, the right side will always win. That is my sentiment.
Thank you to the three of you for appearing today. I happen to have a question which I called into Attorney General Brown's office today, and that is, can Maryland, or has Maryland, emulate what the Attorney General of Arizona is doing to set up a helpline to Arizonans who are having trouble with SSA in the face of instructions to SSA's employees that they must not talk to the press and reveal what really is happening. This was, for reference, it was on Rachel Maddow last night. So you can take a look if I'm not being particularly clear about what I'm asking. We need, I'm thinking that, yes, every state needs a helpline and also to reveal what's going on with the state citizens in their SSA issues.
So if I can, I'll be really brief, and I'm glad you called us. Go to our Maryland attorneygeneral.gov or whatever it is, put in Maryland Attorney General to take you there. And we have links to get you to people, primarily our consumer protection, and they can direct you where you need to go. But I also want to point out that the governor also has set up links to resources for veterans, for federal government employees, current and soon to be former, for seniors as well. So if you don't see what you're looking for on our site, go to the governor's website, and I think you'll find that there as well. But I'll certainly bring it to my team's attention and the governor's attention. If SSA kind of resource and support aren't obvious on the website, we'll see what we can do to improve that.
I'm not having a question.
Yeah.
So this is because SSA employees are being suppressed from revealing what's actually happening. And this is a twofold thing, to help individuals and also to bring light to failures in this new regime.
Got it. I understand. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. And so, in the interest of trying to get to as many questions as we can, we're going to keep you all to have your minute and a half. I will try to shorten any answers I give, and I will ask my guests to try to do so as well, so we can try to get through as many as we can.
I have
also want to just add that we actually have a link on the front page of our website, marylandcomptroller.gov, for any nonprofits or small businesses or any businesses that are seeing their federal funds not come through. It's a way for us to start tracking and to try to get those businesses and nonprofits resources. So if you go to marylandcomptroller.gov, if you have any businesses who were supposed to get a federal grant or nonprofits who were supposed to get a federal grant and it stopped, please tell them to report it to us so that we can be helpful. Thanks.
Our office is also happy to, especially if there's any individual needs or requests to help with benefits and services. We do that stuff all the time. So Mandy and her team are on that.
Thank you for taking my question, and thank you for being here, and thank you for being up front. And I just want to say, ask not what your government can do for you, but what you can do for them, right? So, I just want to tell you that I am a little bit more alarmist because I had a great-grandmother who was in Germany and was anti-Hitler, and she was fighting in a political party against him, and she was assassinated. I actually have documentation that Hitler was very good at keeping documentation. And I think that was the first thing he did. He went after anybody who was fighting him. And I don't think, he's doing what he's doing, and I'm sorry. I think it's coming, and I think that we have to be on fire now, because once those things start happening, and they are, then we're in trouble. And the thing I want to ask you about, I want to ask an offer for you. As they come after our third graders in our schools, as they come after our mothers in cars and break windows and drag them out, we have got to stop them and stop to yell and cry and I need your help. I will stand with you, I will take a vote for you, I will do whatever you need. But we've got to find a way to protect our citizens and our immigrants and our undocumented workers that put food on our table. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a Baltimore City resident and a Maryland State resident, and I'm very grateful that you guys are representing us in the federal government and taking time out with us. I'm a Taiwanese American. I was born and raised when Taiwan was under white terror and authoritarian rule. And my father was part of a movement that pushed back and made Taiwan a democracy. And it's so interesting that now as a middle-aged man, I see that the democracy that my father looked up to go backwards, while Taiwan itself is a thriving democracy supporting gay marriage and all the progressive values that the United States professes to believe in. I am concerned, as many people, as you guys have noted, about Taiwan's current situation. And I know you, as Representative Olszewski, as a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, I would hope you would express your opinion on how you would view Taiwan and the complicated foreign affairs walk the United States might hold, even though I recognize all the value that and the important perspectives everyone else is sharing. I would appreciate to hear your perspective. Thank you.
Taiwan is a critical ally of the United States. It is a good example of how we should be moving in the positive direction towards democracy. I look forward to visiting Taiwan soon in this role, and I will just say that we both have to be a good partner to Taiwan and give them assurances and support as they literally with their neighbor on their doorstep are pursuing aggression against them as China continues to be increasingly hostile and aggressive towards a partner and an ally. We need to be prepared to help them in their time of need, but we also need to be setting a good example, which we're not doing now in terms of our own democratic practices. And so I both will be going to Taiwan to reaffirm the American commitment, even as I work with all of you to fight at home so that we are that shining example for not just Taiwan, but the world again.
Hello, this is a message for the panel. My name is Leon Johnson II from Baltimore County, NAACP, and my question is immigration. Ms. Brooke, you mentioned that immigration sometimes takes your students and send them back home. What about ripping apart their families? Okay, the young lady over here mentioned veterans being reactivated. That happened to me. After 9/11, I had a great civilian life. I was reactivated in 2005 to go overseas. I've only been home for a year now. You spend your life in Iraq, Afghanistan, DMZ, Korea, and doing everything else. But when you bring your family back to America, immigration says, thank you for your service, but your family has to go back home. I'm currently facing that issue. I've already told your office to help me with that issue. What are we doing with immigration? And please don't say it's hard. Try being a comment. That is hard. We need to put a stop to it.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Douglas Smith. I'm chairman of the Baltimore County Commission on Disabilities. Johnny, you appointed me. Thank you. I also serve the Maryland Commission on Disabilities and work in the field of disabilities. The president got our community's attention when he suggested that hires of people with significant disabilities are the issues at the airports, when really we're the ones cleaning the toilets, vulnerability one programs, and things like that. Slashes to the Department of Education, Social Security, and Medicaid are clearly targeted to our most vulnerable citizens, including those with disabilities. My comment today, or suggestion, is to engage with us. We are loud. We may have perceived mobility issues, but we mobilize very quickly. I'm sure all of you saw that recently when there were proposed budget for the Developmental Disability Administration, and we showed it in force. So, just extending an invitation, reach out, lead us, we'll crawl up those capital steps.
Hello. First of all, thank you for letting us know about Mr. Garcia. It's been a rough 100 days, and so hearing the events were terrible, but hearing some good news come out of it, it's just, all is not lost. So thank you for letting us know that. So my question is for Attorney General. So lawsuits are great. What's going to be done while we wait for these lawsuits to go to court?
I believe in straight talk. You're going to wait for me while I'm in court. Okay, that's my job. I go to court, and what I want you to do, I invite you to go to Maryland attorneygeneral.com, gov, whatever it is, find us, and we'll keep you posted on everything we're doing. We're involved in 10 cases. Each one of those cases has, multiple moving parts, enforcement orders, temporary orders, permanent orders, compelling certain things. So we're not waiting, right? We are actively engaged every day. We wake up in the Office of the Attorney General, and perhaps many of you do as well, as if every day there's a natural disaster. That's the sense of urgency we have. I mean, it really is. Don't you feel that way sometimes? Like, oh my goodness, what happened last night or before 10 o'clock this morning? It's like a natural disaster, but it's not. It's an assault on us by our government. So I'm not sure who's waiting to do what, but we're not waiting. So we're in court. We're going to get results. We're going to move forward. We're going to have setbacks. We're going to keep moving forward and have setbacks. What you can do, though, is you can be at community events like this. You're engaging your member of Congress, letting him or her, him in this case, know, hey, what's important to us? What do we think you ought to be doing? Things like that. If you were down in Annapolis during the legislative session, engage in the legislature as they're figuring out the response to the assault from Washington. So you can be engaged and not have to wait around while my team and I are doing our thing.
Great, thank you.
Let me just add to that. When my team picks up the phone call, the first thing we want to know is how we can help you, what your issue is. So if you were calling, let's say, any member of Congress, right, you can tell them what you're concerned about, what you're passionate about. They might then find out that you're not a constituent and it may not carry as much weight, but hearing from you is important. You may have, let's say, a family member or a friend who lives on, I don't know, the Eastern Shore. So, if you live on the Eastern Shore and have property, make sure you tell them how this is affecting you and your family, how it's affecting their family, so they, too, are calling their member of Congress, or maybe there's a representative in, I don't know, Iowa that you have family members out. I mean, there's so much power in this room that even if we let the Attorney General do his job, we can be doing stuff too. So, let's not forget that.
Yeah, I want to explore what the Congressman just said and the Attorney General, because I think it's really important for us to remember that each of us can do what we can with what we have where we are each day. Everybody has a role to play in this, and that role may change based on where you are each day or each week or each month, but maybe one day or 1 week it's digging in with your community group because there's a challenge that's come up. Maybe it's related to the federal government, maybe it's not. But we have to keep moving in every single sphere of our civic life. You know, last week, I think I felt a shift, right? Both with Cory Booker standing up, because I was seeing it on every single social media platform. It was on every news station, and then the marches, right? And we started seeing big shifts at the energy level change, right? And so I just think it's so important that we're in court. It's so important we have the information that we need to do this. It's so important that we have amazing representation at our federal level, and that Johnny is trying to work with Republicans there too. It's also so important that you keep digging in at the community level and keep showing up at protests and rallies and elsewhere and sharing with others in Maryland, across the country, what this means to you. So thank you for continuing to do that. It matters.
My name is David. Can you hear me? I'm independent, but I don't feel like I have another venue. In this blizzard of situations we're dealing with, there's one that has stuck to me the most. And before I go to that, thank you for your comments on diversity. I appreciate that. This was written by Bob Ortega, CNN, came in yesterday. It says, Trump is dismantling election security networks. State officials want to warn. Of all the things, this scares me.
I'll share two observations on elections. One will be alarming, and one will be hopefully hopeful. Today, the House voted by the narrowest of margins, 3 votes, right? These votes matter, to enact what would represent the single largest disenfranchisement, particularly of women voters in this country's history. Fortunately, I do not believe that bill will advance in the U.S. Senate, because there requires 60 votes there, and they don't have those votes. So there's a real push. But what I will also say is it comes to the administration of elections. That is a function of state and local government. And what I can tell you is, I know in this state, my experience has been, there are Republicans, independents, and Democrats who are committed to democracy and getting it right. As someone who won by 17 votes and painstakingly watched every vote get counted again and again. But the people in that room, all parties, they're committed to making sure our elections are free and fair. And so I trust, and we've seen even in sort of conservative Republican-led states, that those election administrators have stepped up and have done the right thing. And when there are challenges that the Attorney General and others have led, like the presidential election of when President Trump lost, time after time after time, conservative appointed, liberal appointed judges tossed this. So I understand the concern, but I think that there's reason to be optimistic that we actually will still have free and fair elections.
Hi, I'm Rosemary, a 17-year-old high school student at a Catholic school in Baltimore. I'm here because I love my state and country. And I know that if I were not here, it would be unlikely that another person under the age of 18 would be present tonight. Despite my education and my school's desire to teach equity, inclusion, nonviolence, and current global events such as Yemen and Taiwan and Gaza and Ukraine, I see very few people out in spaces like this as young as I am. I myself wouldn't be here if it weren't for my mother. I understand my unique perspective as someone with a sibling with special needs. Therefore, I'm constantly aware of how legislation impacts my family and those who
express my right to free speech and my sister's right to live as a free American, as a disabled American, and for my friends to now be sent back to where they came from, to have an education as an American. Thank you.
Rosemary, thank you for your bravery and your courage and your tenacity. I want you to know that part of why we want to be connected is because we want to tell your story and your sister's story and your friend's story. We want to amplify those voices because that's the only way that we change those hearts. That's how I get those three. That's how I go back to Dundalk, which is not exactly liberal bastion or a Democratic bastion, but they're hardworking people. And if you look them in the eye and not scream at, but if you speak truth with love and you really connect them to my 9-year-old little girl who's in school with their 9-year-old little boy and girl and talk about what we're trying to preserve together, that's how we get those hearts changed. That's how we change what happens in 2026. It's how I convince people here and hopefully in the Congress. I don't take the obligation lightly. I know that Brooke does, and I know that Anthony does. But we have an obligation to do everything we can to lift up what you share with us tonight. And so thank you again for your courage, and thank you for being here. We really appreciate you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Judy, and I want to thank all three of you for being here. I feel very proud to be a Marylander. I did canvassing, phone calls, I knocked on doors for Angela, for Harris, and to my dismay, the worst thing happened. And right now, I'm going to tell you in all sincerity, I feel like the Democratic Party at the national level, its reputation, it's in the crap. It is. I don't know if you saw the polling. It is in the 20s. And this is a serious problem because the president we have, who pretends to be, for the people, a populist president, he's not that. That's a lie. And we have Fox News and other outlets lying to people every day, so we have a wall of misinformation and disinformation. So I want to tell you to go back to Hakeem Jeffries and tell him what happened with Schumer was ridiculous. Okay? I was furious. We cannot have politics from the 80s and 90s. We need bold, we need strong, Al Gore lost Florida by 549 votes. I remember it very well. And now we have lost Florida. We have really lost Florida. Why did that happen? What has the Democratic Party done to wake up and get these groups back? It's an embarrassment. Mr. Trump said in the rallies in November, he told his supporters, don't worry, after this election, you won't have to vote anymore. He said that. Take him seriously. Please. We have to get smart now. And let me just tell you, as kind of good news, those special elections in District 1 and I think the other one for Gates and the other, they were lost by 15 points, but they were won before by 30. And the deep red congressional races. So that's got to tell the Democratic Party that we should be competitive everywhere. Everywhere. I gave, my husband's right there, he's probably going to hate this, but I was like, let's donate another 100 and another 50, and I was constantly on my phone. They would say, you need your help. I would donate all the time. And then just to see this happen, Let me tell you this though, what he does have is he does communicate. He does it very well. And he pounds the drum again and again and again. I had the best economy ever. I had this, I had that. It's not true. We got to do better to win these people back, or we're going to be in trouble.
Messaging for the Democratic Party is more than problematic. I have been a chief election judge, community activist. I work in the school system. I am looking for someone in the Democratic Party on the local level to coalesce all of our groups. When I look in this room, I see a whole mess of different groups of people. But are we being pulled together to move forward together? I don't hear it, okay? And I did do the Social Security rally. That was because Hands Off sent me an email. Otherwise, what would I have been doing in last week? To move us, and I say us, forward, because we're all in the same boat. Okay? So, like the young lady just got finished saying, the Democratic Party is remiss. They're missing an opportunity. We can help everyone in this country to move forward, but we need some guidance, okay? From the local level on up. I think that's where you all need to be working, because Ms. Harris should not have lost that election.
First, thank you all for being here this evening, and I'd like to thank you all for being here because this is a participatory democracy. So thank you. I think this question, you've already answered my question, so I'm going to skip ahead to my colleague, and I think this is for you, A.G. Brown. My former colleagues are federal employees, and they're concerned about having their retirement annuities and health benefits taken away. And because it is, after all, in the budget, is there anything that any of you can do to help offset that so that they don't lose their benefits, particularly those who are in mid-career, those ages between, say, 35 and 55. They've been there for 15 years or so. They still have another 15, 20 years to work. It's a scary situation when you're a homeowner, you've got kids in school, car note, mortgage, et cetera, et cetera. What can you do to help? Thank you.
The most responsible thing I can do as a lawyer is really to advise federal government employees, either current, recently terminated. You've got to consult with your labor union. Even if you're not a member of the union, the union will provide resources for you to walk you through your post-employment benefits. And for me to sit on stage and try to advise federal government employees on federal retirement law and personnel law, that would be irresponsible for me. I would recommend that you suggest to your friends, colleagues, family members who are federal government employees, and for the rest you touch base with the labor, whether it's AFGE, AFSCME, NTEU, all the alphabet labor organizations. And of course, as Congressman Olszewski mentioned, he's got a constituent team, and they can assist you as well.
This question is in respect to, and thanks for all of the generations before us that have protested for their lives here in America and around the world in crisis. And we are in a constitutional crisis right now. My representative, Johnny O, was just standing beside me in Baltimore on Saturday protesting the same. So I want to hear about that. This is a constitutional crisis that we are in right now. I want to ask you all, do you commit public resources to those out there in the streets, those millions of people out in the streets from this weekend, to providing public resources for them to do this necessary work?
I swore an oath of this country when I was sworn in as a member of the United States Congress. I will commit everything within my power. Resources, time, my personal commitment, my life if necessary. To the point earlier, I love this country, and I love it because of the people in this room and the people I'm sharing the stage with. So whatever we can do to support the people who are willing to defend and share that oath with me, we will make sure that you have everything we can provide.
There are many of us that will volunteer as tribute to get arrested with you if that day comes.
Hello, thank you guys for coming. I'm a poetry and children's author, and I have a poem that I'd like to read to you all. We are in a night that we cannot see, a sky of a future that we hope does not end in grief. He says ship them overseas and neglects the idea of unity. So I asked Maryland, what is our position in this opposition? I say to lead with the mentality of progression. We speak with passion and walk with action. We stand together to ensure satisfaction. This is a matter that will not lead in disaster. In God we trust. This is a time to understand the importance of standing together, to know that power is what we give and our true power is where we live. The community, the people, this is where it truly begins.
Would you be willing to share that and let us push that out to, we post that as a follow-up tonight? Thank you. Appreciate you sharing.
Hello, my name is Bob Barzak. I have lived in Baltimore County 69 years, and foremost, I am an American. And my question deals with what can be done for everyone. Johnny O, I wrote your office a long letter 2 months ago. I am still waiting for a response. I have not gotten any response. My question is very simple. What are you going to do to protect Social Security and Medicare? And I'm not talking about politically, I'm talking about what needs to be done fundamentally. And in the meantime, Brooke, I have two very easy issues for you. Number one, my wife worked for 39 years in Maryland Shock Trauma Center, dealing with paraplegics, head injuries, quadriplegics. She lost her prescription plan. They're now talking about using other therapies as a state retiree. What would you do to help her? And number two, we're losing a lot of people to Pennsylvania. Both my sons work, and they're both in their 30s. My son in Rumsted, Maryland, pays $15,000 more a year in taxes than his brother, who lives in Media, PA, where the tax rate is 3.07. What will you propose to do to help all Marylanders lower the rate?
Sure. Thanks so much for that question. Yes, and I know the governor and the General Assembly did pass legislation several years ago to make sure that our state workers they do move to Medicare when they are eligible for Medicare, and there are state resources to ensure that if Medicare doesn't cover a drug that they need, the state steps in to fill that gap. As for population shifts, I know. I think we all do. And it is a huge challenge for the state of Maryland. In fact, in 2021, we lost population in Maryland for the first time since World War II. People are moving to states that have a lower cost of living, like Pennsylvania, like West Virginia, and actually people are moving to Maryland from states that have a higher cost of living, like DC, New Jersey. The truth is that the cost of living, it's not necessarily determined by, in fact, it's not really determined by taxes, although our tax debt can feel high. The biggest chunk of your cost of living expense is housing. And if we don't have enough housing for people to move here, they can't afford to buy a house here because the costs have gone up so much because there's so much demand and too few houses, then people won't live here. If we're able to have more space, have more homes for people to live in, then we are able to bring in more revenue. And in fact, that revenue challenge is shared by more people, right? If you look in Baltimore City, for instance, we have the highest property taxes in the state, in large part because 30% of property owners in Baltimore City don't owe any property tax because they're nonprofits or churches or government buildings. And that's great. We're excited to have them. But because there's fewer people paying property taxes, we have to pay more. And so in order to reduce the cost of living, we just need to tackle our housing challenges. My agency is actually working on a report all about housing and the economy that will come out this summer, because we want to make sure our policymakers have the facts and that people understand in order to build an economy that works for Maryland, you've got to be able to afford to live here.
Whatever it takes. Medicaid, Medicare, especially Social Security, these are all promises and compacts that we've made. These are programs. Social Security is something you all have paid into your entire life. It is an entitlement. You are entitled to it. And we want all of us to remind my colleagues and to remind this president that we are entitled to this. These are all sacred promises that we've made to ourselves and to each other. And so whatever it takes, we will make sure we do that. Okay.
Do you have the plan? I mean, it's nice to say we're going to do whatever, but
The plan is to make sure that we defeat this extreme Republican budget bill that will gut some of these programs. The plan is to keep pushing back in the courts and going and fighting against these illegal firings. The plan is to try to pass my bill to protect employees who should be protected. It's all of the above. It's marching it's going to the hands-off Social Security, hands-off Medicare, hands-off Medicaid rallies. I mean, it really, as we've been saying all night, it's going to require all of us to do all of it. Yeah.
When I was in school, we looked at Social Security, and we knew 40 years ago that it was not going to be long-lasting. We knew that Medicare was not going to be long-lasting. We need to have a plan as the Americans that are paying into this fund that doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. We need to have a concrete plan. And to me, this is the time to start writing that plan. Start writing the proposals. Because unless something happens, even if it's a Democratic Congress and a Democratic president, 6 years from now, it goes to 79%. And everybody in Social Security in this room is going to take a 21% cut. So I don't care if you march on it. It's not going to. Guess what? Marching doesn't pay the bills.
Which is why we track how long it's been without a day, without a lower cost. And we will make sure that Mandy and the team gets a full and thorough response as well. So I also want to acknowledge Councilman Julian Jones. Julian Jones is joining us as well.
Thanks for being here. I'm a federal contractor, and I appreciate your commitment to standing up on behalf of federal workers and my colleagues who are contractors. Please don't forget us as federal contractors. We have in support of the federal workforce. I spent the last 7 years working as a contractor on behalf of the Veterans Administration for the federal workforce, doctors, nurses, and administrative staff at the VA, including at the Baltimore VMC and the Perry Point Community Care Office. Veterans affairs, veterans issues are very near and dear to my heart, even though I'm not a veteran. Will you commit to working with your colleagues on the HVAC and SVAC to make sure that Veterans Health Administration, the direct care system, is not disrupted, cut, or hurt in any way by bills like the Access Act, which are currently making its way through the system? I know you're not on that committee, but we take steps to make sure that doesn't pass.
You have my full and complete support. I think there's no greater calling than I know our Attorney General is a veteran who said, like, there's no greater service. And again, this budget bill that has has passed, and that my colleagues on the Republican side now have to actually spell out the cuts and not just say the words aren't in the bill. When that budget bill comes forward, there will be $800 billion of cuts to Medicaid. There will be $800 billion of cuts. The Congressional Budget Office has already been clear in their analysis. There will be cuts to hungry kids and families in SNAP. There will be cuts to veteran benefits, including the burn pits that we recently got fixed and funded. That's real. And so that's what we're facing. So you've got my commitment, but it's not just stopping the other bits. It's this baseline reconciliation package that's going to be working its way through Congress that has real consequences for all of us.
Thank you so much for your service. I'll also just add, and I'm glad you brought it up, almost 15% of our state's economy is procurement. And from federal, state, local agencies, that in FY22 was over $68 billion of business in Maryland businesses. And so, we have an amazing ecosystem of often veteran-owned, minority-owned businesses that are doing business with Maryland, with local governments, and with the federal government. So I'm a member of something called the Board of Public Works. We all state procurement comes through us, and it's the governor, me, and the treasurer, and we are working every day to make sure that we are supporting our Maryland-based businesses, right, for the needs to support Maryland state government. So thank you for your service, thank you for your work, and we look forward to supporting you more. Thank you.
And last, but certainly not least,
I waited my turn. First of all, thank you, Congressman, for hosting this event. I want to thank our Attorney General and our Comptroller for being here and answering questions. It underscores the importance of a free and democratic society. So thank you so much. I'd also like to give a shout out to all of your staff and your aides and your district director, because I used to work for a congressman, so I know how difficult the job is, and you're staying up late, and we appreciate it. There are a couple of concerns that I have. One has to do with Social Security, but I've given one of your staff members a letter, so I'll leave that because I know that the time is short. I just want to say, the Attorney General has said that we're not in a constitutional crisis. And I just have to say, we may not be in a constitutional crisis, but I really want to know what kind of crisis we're in when a group of people we do not know can break into government agencies, take access to our personal and private information. They have to be in violation of at least one act that I know of, and that's the HIPAA Act. What kind of crisis are we in when a guy in a polo shirt stands in front of an agency that's funded by Congress and denies Congress members entry? That's the question that I have. It may not be a constitutional crisis, but it's certainly a crisis of some sort.
I actually think that's a good place to leave things. I think it's a charge to all of us to think about what's in front of us today, tomorrow, and the next week. Thank you all so much for being so giving and generous with your time. Thank you for your passion and for your care for your country, but more importantly, for each other. And I think the last thing I want to leave you with, in addition to thanking Towson again, thanking my partners and friends, Anthony and Brooke, for being here, is this. If we care for our families and our neighbors and each other, we can get through anything. And so, as we go home to our family and to our friends and our neighbors, let's take that care to each other, and let's do that one thing for them, even as we do this one thing for this country that we all share. And just know that the three of us are in this with you, and that, as Martin Luther King reminded us about the arc of the moral universe, it is long, but it always bends towards justice. Thank you all so much for that.